Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I was always that girl who spent hours in front of the mirror, trying out new styles and products. It became a part of my identity. So when my fiance proposed, I knew my wedding hairstyle had to be perfect. I spent months researching hairstylists in our area. That's when I found this guy who seemed to be the best in the business. His portfolio was impressive and his reviews were glowing. I booked him 6 months in advance and paid a $600 deposit to secure the date. Everything was going smoothly until 3 days before the wedding. I got a call from the hairstylist. He told me he was calling about my wedding appointment. I asked if everything was okay. That's when he dropped the bomb saying he wasn't comfortable doing my hair for the wedding. I was shocked and asked why, reminding him we'd been planning this for months. He simply said he didn't think he could deliver what I was looking for and was canceling the appointment. When I brought up the fact that the wedding was in 3 days and asked about my deposit, he flatly refused to refund it, claiming it was non-refundable. I was shocked. How could he do this to me? I tried reasoning with him, but he wouldn't budge. I was left without a hairstylist and out $600 just days before my wedding. My fiancé saw how upset I was and suggested we talk to a lawyer. We found one who specialized in contract disputes and set up a meeting. The lawyer asked if we had paid a $600 deposit for a service that wasn't provided. I confirmed this and added that the stylist was refusing to refund it. When asked about a contract, my fiancé confirmed we had everything in writing. The lawyer said this was good and gave us something to work with, but he couldn't promise anything as these cases can be tricky. When I asked about our chances of getting the money back, he said it was hard to say. He warned that we could take legal action, but we'd likely spend more than $600 on legal fees. My fiancé then asked if small claims court was an option. The lawyer agreed this might be our best bet, as it's less expensive and doesn't require a lawyer. We decided to take the hairstylist to small claims court. It wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about principle. The day of the court hearing arrived. I was nervous but ready to stand up for myself. The judge asked me to state my case. I explained that I had hired this hairstylist for my wedding. He took a $600 deposit and then canceled 3 days before the event, refusing to refund the money. The hairstylist countered by saying the deposit was non-refundable as stated in the contract. The judge asked to see the contract and reviewed the paperwork carefully. After reviewing, the judge pointed out that while the contract did state the deposit was non-refundable, it also obligated the hairstylist to provide a service. The judge explained that by canceling without a valid reason, the stylist had breached the contract. When the hairstylist tried to argue that he didn't feel comfortable, the judge shut him down. The judge stated that the stylist's comfort was not a legal reason to breach a contract, especially with such short notice. The court found in my favor, ordering the stylist to refund the $600 deposit and pay an additional $200 for the inconvenience caused. We'd won. As we left the courthouse, the hairstylist approached us. He apologized for the trouble he caused, admitting he now realized he had handled the situation poorly. He handed over a check for $800. I thanked him and expressed hope that he would learn from this experience. In the end, I found a new hairstylist who did an amazing job on my wedding day. The whole ordeal taught me the importance of standing up for myself and not letting others take advantage of me. And you know what? My wedding turned out even better than I could have imagined. I've been using a wheelchair for about 2 years now. I was in an accident that left me with a spinal cord injury. The doctor said I might walk again someday with lots of therapy, but for now, this chair is my lifeline. Anyway, last week I was at the mall doing some shopping. I'd just finished picking up a new shirt and was heading towards the food court for lunch. That's when it happened. I was wheeling along minding my own business when this woman came barreling towards me. She looked like she was in a hurry, but instead of going around me, she just pushed me hard. I yelled at her to watch where she was going, but she didn't even stop. Before I knew it, I was on the ground, and she was grabbing my wheelchair. The woman exclaimed that she'd been looking for a wheelchair all day. I asked her what she was doing and told her it was my wheelchair. She accused me of lying and claimed she saw me steal it from the medical supply store. I was shocked. Not only had this woman pushed me out of my chair, but now she was accusing me of stealing it. I tried to explain, but she wasn't having any of it. I told her she was making a mistake and that it was my personal wheelchair that I needed. She insisted I was lying and said she was taking it back where it belonged. By this point, a small crowd had gathered. Some people were trying to help me up, while others were just watching. I called out for someone to please call security. The woman retorted that I should go ahead and call them, claiming they'd arrest me for theft. A kind stranger helped me to a nearby bench while we waited for mall security to arrive. The woman was still there, holding onto my wheelchair like it was her prized possession. When the security guards showed up, they listened to both sides of the story. The woman was adamant that she'd seen me steal the chair from a store in the mall. The security guard asked the woman to show them which store she saw this happen at. She agreed to lead them there. As she started to wheel away in my chair, the security guard stopped her and suggested she just point to it instead, saying they didn't want to move the evidence. The woman pointed to a storefront about 50 feet away. The security guard nodded and spoke into his radio, requesting someone from the medical supply store to come out. A few minutes later, a confused-looking employee came out. The security guard explained the situation and asked if they were missing any wheelchairs. The employee, looking even more confused, informed them that they didn't sell wheelchairs and that it was actually a vitamin shop. The security guard turned back to the woman, who was starting to look a bit nervous, and asked her to explain why she thought it was a medical supply store. The woman stammered, saying she must have gotten confused but insisting she saw me steal it from somewhere. I reiterated that it was my personal wheelchair that I'd had for 2 years. The security guard then told the woman to step away from the wheelchair. As she hesitated, trying to come up with another excuse, 2 police officers approached. Apparently, someone in the crowd had called them. The police asked what the problem was, and the security guard filled them in on what had happened. The police officers listened, then turned to the woman and told her she needed to come with them. The woman protested, asking why and claiming she hadn't done anything wrong. The police officer explained that she had assaulted me and attempted to steal my mobility device, which was a serious offense. As they were putting handcuffs on her, she finally seemed to realize the gravity of what she'd done. She started apologizing, saying she didn't mean to hurt anyone and trying to explain herself, but it was too late for apologies. The police led her away, and I was finally able to get back into my wheelchair. As the crowd dispersed, several people came up to me to make sure I was okay. One woman even offered to buy me lunch, which I gratefully accepted. Looking back, I still can't believe someone would be so entitled as to think they could just take someone else's wheelchair. But I guess there are all kinds of people in this world. At least now, whenever someone asks me if I have any crazy stories, I've got a real doozy to tell them. You see, I'd always felt like the black sheep. I was different from my siblings. I had different interests and different goals. My parents never really got me, and my brothers and sisters seemed to fit in so much better. When I decided to change my name in 1992, it was like the final straw. My family acted like I betrayed them or something. Funny thing is, I ended up choosing the same first name as my sister's first husband. Talk about coincidence, right? You'd think she'd remember that, but apparently not. Anyway, after Dad died, I focused on building my own life. Got married, had a kid, moved to a new place. I sent my family a photo of us, all smiles in front of our new home. My new last name was right there on the frame, clear as day. I know my mom displayed it prominently. Guess my sister never bothered to look. Fast forward to 2019. Mom passed away, also without a will. I heard through the grapevine, but nobody reached out directly. I figured they'd contact me about the estate eventually. It wasn't until 2022 that I found out what had happened. My sister had sold our family home and split the money between herself and 2 of my brothers. The other brother didn't want anything to do with it. And me? Well, according to my sister, she forgot my name. Can you believe that? She'd been in touch with my kid just a few years before mom died. One quick Google search would have found my address. I'd been living in the same place since 2013. But no, apparently that was too much effort. When I confronted her about it, the conversation was tense and frustrating. I asked about the house being sold, and she acted surprised to hear from me. When I questioned why I wasn't included in the estate settlement, she claimed they couldn't find me and didn't even remember my name. I pointed out that she'd been in touch with my kids and had seen the family photo with my new name, but she brushed it off. She argued that since I changed my name, she couldn't keep track. I reminded her that it had been the same for over 30 years and was even the same as her ex-husband's name. She dismissed my concerns, saying it wasn't her problem and that I was the one who disappeared. I insisted that I hadn't disappeared and that they had my number, but she just said the estate was settled and there was nothing left for me. I was furious. It felt like they'd purposely excluded me, using my distance as an excuse. I knew I had to do something, so I started looking into my options. Turns out, the executor of an estate can't just ignore an heir because they don't have contact info. They're supposed to make a real effort to find everyone, and with today's technology, it's not exactly hard to track someone down. I decided to consult a probate attorney. They told me I might have a case, but time was of the essence. There are limits on how long you can make claims on an estate after it's been settled. So here I am, fighting to get what's rightfully mine. It's not even about the money, really. It's about the principle, about being acknowledged as part of the family, even if we're not close. The attorney helped me file a claim against the estate. When my sister found out, she was livid. She called me up, yelling and accusing me of abandoning the family for years and now wanting money. I calmly explained that I hadn't abandoned anyone and that they were the ones who chose not to contact me. She insisted they didn't owe me anything, but I pointed out that legally they did, as I was an heir whether she liked it or not. She called the whole thing ridiculous and said I'd never win, but I stood my ground and told her we'd see about that. Long story short, we ended up in court. My sister tried to argue that they'd made a reasonable effort to find me, but the judge wasn't buying it. One look at my amended birth certificate and a simple Google search was all it took to prove how easy it would have been to locate me. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. My sister and brothers were ordered to pay me my fair share of the estate, plus interest. It's bittersweet, you know? I never wanted it to come to this, but sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even against family, especially against family. So here's my advice. Keep those lines of communication open, even if it's hard. And if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. You never know when a simple name change and a family photo might just save the day. After landing a decent job in the city, I bought my first house in a quiet suburb. It was perfect until I met the guy next door. At first, he seemed friendly enough. We'd chat over the fence and he'd invite me over for barbecues. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. This guy had a serious drinking problem. Not the kind where you have a few too many at parties. No, he was downing beers like water from sunrise to sunset. And that wouldn't have been my business if he'd kept it to himself. But no, he had to make it everyone's problem. His favorite pastime, drunk driving. And I'm not talking about sneaking home after one too many. At the bar, this dude would get absolutely plastered, then decide he needed to go for a joyride. The whole neighborhood was his personal parking lot. I remember the first time I saw his car parked sideways across someone's front yard. I thought it was a prank, but then it kept happening. Sometimes he'd leave it in the middle of the street, other times wedged between two properly parked cars like some kind of automotive sandwich. I tried talking to him about it when he was sober. His response was infuriating. He told me to mind my own business, claiming that because he paid his taxes, he could park wherever he wanted. That's when I started calling the police. They'd come, ticket him, sometimes even tow the car. But it never stopped him. He'd just stumble out, pay the fine, and do it all over again the next day. The last straw came when I got home from a long day at work, only to find his beat-up sedan blocking my driveway. Again. I was tired, hungry, and completely out of patience. I shouted at him, letting him know his car was blocking my driveway. When I got no response, I yelled again, telling him I needed to park. I could hear the TV blaring inside, so I knew he was home. Still, I got no answer. That's when I decided enough was enough. If he wouldn't move his car, I'd do it for him. Now, I'm no mechanic, but I've picked up a few tricks over the years. I went to my garage and dug out my car jack and some dollies. It took some effort, but I managed to get his car lifted and onto the dollies. As I was rolling it back to his driveway, huffing and puffing, a brilliant idea struck me. I had some scrap wood lying around, 2 4x4s left over from a shelving project. With a bit of black paint and some creative thinking, I fashioned a pair of makeshift car lifts. After parking his car in his driveway, I slid those painted 2x4s under the rear axle. To anyone looking, they just seemed like part of the car, but they were just tall enough to lift the rear tires about 1/8 of an inch off the ground. The next morning I woke up early, made myself a cup of coffee, and settled in by the window for the show. Around noon, my neighbor stumbled out, clearly nursing a hangover. He got in his car, and I watched as he tried to back out of the driveway. The engine revved, but the car didn't move. He expressed his confusion loudly, getting out to walk around the car and kick the tires. Then he got back in and tried again. Nothing. This went on for days. He tried to start the car, fail, then give up and go back inside. I could hear him on the phone, probably calling mechanics, who told him everything looked fine. I overheard him complaining to someone on the phone, insisting that the car wouldn't move despite the engine starting fine. After a week of this, I was packing up to move. I'd gotten a job offer in another state, and honestly, I was ready for a change of scenery. As I was loading up the moving truck, I saw my neighbor outside still puzzling over his car. He called out to me, asking if I could take a look at his car since I was good with them. He mentioned that it seemed like the car had been cursed. I walked over, pretending to examine the car. Then I shrugged and told him I couldn't see anything wrong. I suggested that maybe it was karma for all the times he'd parked in everyone else's spots. As I drove away in my moving truck, I saw him in my rearview mirror, still staring at his car like it was some kind of alien spacecraft. I never found out if he ever figured it out, but I like to imagine him, years later, still telling the story of his mysteriously immobile car to anyone who'll listen. And maybe he learned to keep his drunk driving to himself. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.